So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we have Mr. Lee Edney on the podcast. Now, we were just chatting offline. Myself and Lee have been working together for nearly over a year now, and Lee's just finished up with me in the program. By all accounts, from my perspective, smashed it. Had an amazing, I guess, journey with himself, physically, mentally, in a great spot now. So I wanted to bring Lee on to talk about his experience because I think it's inspirational and exciting for anyone listening. Before I do that, Lee, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, a bit about you?
Yeah, cheers, Luke. Thanks for having me on today. A bit about background. Lee Edney. I'm 41. I'm a dad of two boys that are 6 and 7. Just recently got married. I work in tech. I've got a pretty full-on kind of corporate job.
Yeah.
Just recently moved up to London as well.
Busy then?
Yeah, pretty busy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 2 young boys, hectic job, just got married as well. So, lots to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. And I can relate, and I'm sure anyone listening can relate as well, right? The general watch, the viewers or whatever for this podcast or listeners, I think it's guys kind of in the thick of it like you're describing. So that's why I think getting someone like you on to talk about the work we've done and where you're at is really helpful. That being said, let's kick off and jump off. I think the best place to start probably is rewinding when we first spoke. So that's probably, over 12 months ago now, I think. Let's rewind to then. I think you'd possibly seen a bit of my content on LinkedIn, decided to reach out and ask for a chat. What was going on for you back then that made you want to reach out and have a chat with somebody like me? What was going on?
No, I think it was. I think it was about 15 months or so ago, right? Maybe a little bit more. At the time, right, I'd proposed. We'd started to book a date for the wedding.
Nice.
And we'd been having a little bit of a discussion, like me and my fiance at the time, which was, look, we kind of need to get into shape, and we need to get ready for the wedding and stuff like that, right? Like, it'd been a busy couple of years, and I hadn't really focused on fitness and stuff like that. I'd had a few sort of bits in the past where I'd had a bit of time where I'd kind of done it for like a year or half a year, and then work got in the way and all that kind of stuff, right? And it was quite fortunate, actually. It was I think the first thing I saw of yours was a guy that I used to go to college with had reposted one of your videos, right? And I think he'd added it. I can't remember if it was LinkedIn or Facebook, but he'd reposted one of your videos and said, "Hey, look, I've been doing this program," and there was a bit of detail of what he did, and I was like, "Wow, that's where I am, right? Like, I need to get off my ass, and I need to start getting fit and kind of focusing on myself and stuff like that." So I think I watched a couple of the videos on your website, first of all. And then you and I had a kind of one-to-one call, and we sort of talked it through, and just everything that you said to me sort of just hit home, really. Like, I remember you talking about, you work a lot with guys like me, similar kind of profile, like, got these high intensity jobs, the focus has been on work, like you sort of feel like you're failing in other areas, the balance isn't quite right, and you kind of know things are slipping. And I remember coming off the call and just thinking, that's sort of me in a nutshell, really, right? And then we signed up and started working. I remember it because it was exactly 12 months to the day before the wedding, I think.
Yeah, it was literally. I remember you said an exact year before the wedding.
Yeah. And I was like, right, I got a year. I need to get myself sorted. I'm really going to focus in on it. You told me a little bit about what the program was going to involve and how it built up and stuff. And I was like, actually, that's kind of perfect for me, right? Like, I knew I wasn't in a position to jump head first into something that was going to be like, 100% on day one. I like the idea that this was going to build up, and then we kicked off, and I joined the blueprint.
Yeah, and then what you're describing there in terms of the work kind of flat out, that's compromising your ability to take care of yourself physically, mentally, and knowing that there's a few areas that you want to tidy up, like want to be better with the kids, want to be fitter and healthier, want to be great for my wedding. And I think for you, the wedding was kind of like a burning bridge or a catalyst for it. But even if we removed that, I think you were recognizing that, well, actually, there's stuff I need to address here independently of the wedding. And I remember those conversations that we had, which was like, yeah, I want to be great for my wedding, but not just wedding, then back to type. I want to be able to have stuff that's foundational after the wedding, right? Because it's not just let's look amazing then and then see you later, let's just stop. And I think what we discussed around that, building out a framework of showing up for yourself, getting better balance with work was kind of really important. Notwithstanding you still wanted to look great on your wedding day and those pieces as well, right? And I think guys in general, with where you were at, with what you were describing, is that sometimes it can feel like, well, there's nothing like completely on fire here. Like I'm not like, I'm not dying, but I don't feel great and I know I can be better. But because work's so hectic and then, fiance, all the other stuff going on, you can't quite see the wood for the trees to work out how you can make it work, in a sort of balanced way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've always been I've always been very career minded and like a bit of a workaholic and stuff, right? And so, as I got to a point where I was working full time, like that became a big priority, right? But like much more than, like looking after myself and stuff. And obviously as you get older, the impact of that kind of gets a bit more, bit more profound, right? So yeah, I mean, that was what you and I talked about. I sort of found myself in a situation where, I was working a lot, like, I found it difficult to disconnect from that and kind of put the priority for myself on an equal footing to doing stuff kind of work related. And, I was starting to notice stuff like I got two young boys. They're both very energetic. I was noticing that I'm kind of sluggish with them when, we're out playing in the park and they want to chase me around and, all that kind of stuff. Right. So there was quite a lot of good reasons to try and focus on this. The wedding was obviously one big one, but
Yeah.
then there was plenty of others as well.
Underneath. And that whole thing where you've got like work and it's full on and you want to really succeed, and that and pushing yourself in that domain is good, and it comes from a well-intentioned place because you want to succeed, you want to provide, you want to be, all of those things are really important and valid. But there's often a point where that starts to get like diminishing returns and you're putting so much into that and not enough for yourself, and then you end up showing up lesser than you would like to in a few areas with your health, with your kids, or with your missus or whatever. And it's frustrating because you're like, well, it's not that I want to be like that, but because work's so hectic, you can't quite see what you need to do to address it, and that becomes overwhelming. But it comes from a place of, well, I want to be successful, but then actually you get a law of diminishing returns off the back of it. And so what worked historically, maybe when you were younger, when you're 40, two young lads about to get married, all the rest of it, like there's more responsibility, so it's harder to see the wood for the trees to sort of plot the course to sort yourself within that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to like, you fall into that trap, you work quite a lot, then you don't feel like you got the energy, you want to come home and, you open a bottle of wine and have a glass or two of that, and then you're tired, then you wake up a bit groggy the next morning, right? And you just sort of end up repeating that cycle,
Yeah.
over and over again. I think I just got to a point where I'm like, I got to break this and I need to do something fairly like drastic with it, right? Like, I'd had these sort of like bit attempts at doing it before where, a few months after Christmas and stuff, like there was some motivation to do it and then it tapered off and, it didn't really make any long-term changes with all of it and stuff. Right. And so I was like, look, I need to do something super focused, and actually signing up for the program, like really focus my mind on it. Right. Not and I quite deliberately knew that I wanted to do something where I was going to pay for it, make a commitment, and like, because I knew that would give some emphasis. And so that,
Yeah, and that's important because you get to a point where you recognise I want to make a change. I can't quite see what it is I need to do, but I know I need to do it. I've tried stuff historically, which maybe like from the fitness side of things, new year, new me, and then after a while you got motivated for 2 weeks, then it all sort of slowly creeps back again.
Yeah.
And so you want to do something, you want to commit, but what you don't want is that to happen again, which is like a couple of weeks or even months into it, back holding the baby back to square one again. And so I think you were very motivated to change. You wanted to change. And get your teeth stuck into it. But one of the things that we just discussed was that you want to make sure that the changes that you make last versus just, drift off after a few months or it falls over, right? I think that's the important distinction. So let's then fast forward to today, Lee. That's where we were. Like, as we sit today then, I guess what have been your key learnings and achievements having come through the process? And we've done a lot of work, a lot of coaching, lots of stuff's happened in that time. You got married as well, which is a really big one. So like what's been the sort of the key learnings and achievements now as we sit today, having come through that process?
I mean, there's been a few. I think one of the kind of ones early on was definitely like this, like you touched upon it a minute ago, but like this idea that like you need to look after yourself to be able to look after everything else, right? It's a bit like that.
Hmm.
Oh, when the things come down on the plane, you got to put your own air mask on
Yeah.
first before the kids and stuff, right? Like, like I that it's almost like a bit of a switch kind of flipping in that sense, right? And I'm like, I do need to do that, and I do need to make time. And some of this other stuff that I would have, you know, always done first, like work wise, like actually some of that can wait and stuff, right? Like that whole thing pretty early on. Um, I think the way that the program kind of builds is really nice, right? Like you sort of do these step by step things over the course of several weeks, right? So you don't feel like you feel like you're making changes, but it's not everything all at once. You get
Hmm.
a chance to kind of layer things on top and, kind of work towards certain things is a nice way to do it, right? It kind of eases you into it. You know, and then some of the stuff that you've done in like week one is, habitual by week 6 and 7 and stuff, right? As you're adding more stuff into it. Um, and it taught me that actually all of these things are possible, right? Like, there's a system there that you can follow, and if you follow the system, like you actually start to see some results pretty quick,
Mm.
right? And you know from things like being able to track the calories that if you do follow that, the results come and stuff, right? It was quite nice to see that progress, um kind of early on and stuff, right? And then I think longer term, you know, you got that comfort there now that, I've had wedding honeymoons and stuff, right? Where there's been times where I've since we stopped working together, bits of it, I've followed the program very strictly, and then bits of it, I've followed it less strictly. But you know that it's always there in the background, right? And
Yeah.
that you can go back to it. You've done it before. You know that it wasn't as difficult before as you thought it was going to be before you, right? So you've always got that thing there that is kind of like, hey, I've done this now, and I can do it again.
Yeah, you've got the foundation there, and it's once you've learned some of those things, have some of those mindset shifts you talk about. Well, actually, I do need to make sure I'm taking care of myself, and life will happen. Good things like weddings and honeymoons and fun stuff, but then also challenging things happen like as well. Like with work, you have to travel lots and do have to travel a lot, and that's going to impact things. And so, what I think what you're talking about there is ultimately being more resilient because you can't do all the things all the time perfectly, and that's not what we expect and know what you would want, really, I don't think. It's more being able to sort of ebb and flow with the demands of what life's presenting you with, and then being able to apply it. And so you might have a pretty relaxed, obviously, I'm sure, on your honeymoon, more chilled out, lots of fun stuff. But then you kind of know what the fundamentals are when you come back, and you can sort of bring those back in line. It's not go completely feral and then monk mode when back. It's like it's the same stuff, just applied in the right way. But then that allows for that, what we talked about before, about that sort of
Mm.
consistency, because then you're not just like some pendulum swing from extreme to nothing. It's there's often a middle ground. And
Mm.
so, and also you can't unlearn stuff. Like when you've had a framework that's working pretty good, you feel good, like you said, it's not scary. You're like, well, even if things drift a bit because life's got in the way, you go, well, okay, we know what we need to do to bring this back, and it isn't rocket science. We can just start back with the basics, and those basics very quickly can, get you back in business, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that was one thing I liked working with you on. That was, you know, it wasn't like, hey, this has to be exactly the same all of the time, right? Like we had,
Mm.
discussions about, look, I got, the wedding's coming up and stuff, right? And we're going to be drinking, and we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be eating, and it was like, I remember you very clearly saying a few times, like, go enjoy it, own it, and deal with it when you come back, right?
Yeah,
Like, you know, so it sort of gives you that flexibility, right? Like it wasn't so rigid, right? But it was also very realistic, right? It's like, look, you can have times off of this. If you have a whole year off of it, it's going to be a problem, right? If you have a weekend off of it, it's not going to matter too much, right? It was like, you know,
that's it.
the
And also,
flexibility.
you've kind of got your eye in with it as well, right? So you like you'd be like, well, I know I'm going to go away and indulge a little bit, but I'm keen to get back and do X, Y, and Z. Because also, if we're building out a set of behaviours day to day, be that what goes in your mouth, how you move your body, how you manage your stress, how you show up for your kids, all the rest of it, and that makes you feel good, you don't not want to do it. you know what I mean? And so it's like, well, actually, this stuff's okay. Like now, you might have a more indulgent, relaxed weekend with drinking, and some of those behaviours and habits that are more BAU, we would call it, day to day, Monday to Friday, might drift off a bit over a weekend, over a holiday, which is normal. But then you don't mind bringing them back because you feel good doing them, right? And actually, if you were all of the not the stuff and you're just doing whatever you want all the time, that doesn't end well either. And that's kind of not exactly, but where you were when we spoke, right? And so you go, well, actually, when I've got my shit together and I'm on top of stuff and I'm putting my oxygen mask on first, I feel pretty good. But then when I totally relax stuff, that's also okay. But I don't want to do that forever because it doesn't feel the best after so long, right? And so it's being able to sort of balance between those two states.
Yeah, exactly. And you said like about the results and stuff, right? I mean, for me, I wanted to get fit. I wanted to drop a load of weight. I just wanted to be in a good place for, the wedding itself. I wanted to set a good example for the kids and stuff like that. Right. And, I certainly like the first 6 months, like, that's where you see the biggest change, right? Like it was huge for me, right? I mean,
You lost your shit ton of weight. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was loads, right? It was
I was about
substantial.
16 or 17 kilos, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
It
And it was
was,
pretty consistent. It was just like that the whole time. So
yeah. And so that's what I mean. Like, it was like, look, like this works, right? I can see this in the graph. I can see it in, the photos I'm taking. I can feel it in my body and, all that good stuff, right? And, connected to that then was, I feel better at work, right? Like I feel more energetic, when the kids are here, we're out doing stuff and, you've got a bunch of, lessons and themes in there about showing up for them and being the best that you can, right? And you felt like ready and prepped to be able to do that, right? Like,
yeah,
and then in turn that makes you feel good. Actually, I feel like I'm doing the best for them. I'm doing the best for work. So like that whole idea of like look after yourself, and then that means you can look after everything else as well. Like it was really true.
totally. And there were on that topic there, Lee, about I mean, it's holistic, right? But the work bit, like you mentioned, well, I'm feeling and operating better at work. There was a podcast I did a couple of weeks back with a gent, Scott, also just finished up in the process. He was in there with you. And he was saying that, and he was like, if you told me at the start of this, this will help you perform better work, I'd have said bollocks, right? I said, yeah, I know I need to sort myself out, not in a similar situation to yourself. I need to be fitter, healthier, happier, less, overwhelmed at work, or at least less stressed at work. But he thought it was all about him taking care of himself. He said, that ain't going to make me any better at work. I'll just feel better myself. And he's like, just so happens, everything's going better at work. The deals have got better. The team's better. And I was like, well, it's obvious really when you think about it. Because if you were to like play out two examples, right, there's version A, which wakes up in the morning fresh, energized, done a little bit of exercise, gives his missus a kiss, not on his phone. The kids are there playing with them, not stressed about work, looking in the mirror, feeling proud of himself. Like the alarm went off and he got up on time, walks out the door calmly, gets to work, feels sharp, walks through the door. That's version A. Version B, snoozes the alarm 4 times, straight on his phone, stressed, snaps at his missus because she's trying to interrupt him while he's on the phone, doesn't really pay attention to his kids, eats a bit of shit, doesn't do any exercise that he's committed to doing and he doesn't do it, looks in the mirror, feels annoyed because the shirt he wants to wear doesn't fit, puts something else on, races out the door, just gets to work on time. Which version of those is going to perform better? And so, like, it's totally obvious when we say it, right? It's going to be version A. But, like, and I'm not saying that exact version was you, by the way, Lee. I'm just using this as an example. But when you explain it like that, it sounds completely obvious. But I think there's a lot of guys who just think that, oh, yeah, and maybe a lot of the time people who talk to me, the driving force isn't being better at work, right? It's I just want to be better myself. But to think that that impact, taking someone from that place to the better place, isn't going to help them perform better at work and in other areas, it's just crazy. But for some reason, I don't know why, we don't always recognize that or see those parallels. Like, I can't give you advice on how to run your business and your team, and know the other guys that I work with. But equally, if we can empower you to feel better, look better, show up as you want, it's just going to have an impact everywhere else, right?
Yeah. One of the things I liked about the program, like when you told me about the whole, 1%, but be the best in all of these different areas of your life and stuff like, I mean, that wasn't what I set out for originally, right? I sort of set out and said, I just want to get fit. Like originally I was thinking I'll sign up like a PT or something like that. Right. And then, as I thought about it and you sort of said, you talked a little bit about like the impact it can have elsewhere and, across your life and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, actually, this sounds kind of interesting. Right. And like you say, I didn't set out, with it with a specific goal to like, to help me at work, right? But everything that you said is true. You turn up, you feel better, you feel sharper, you're on the ball, you got more energy, you're less snappy, like all of that kind of stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes a difference. And you know
And I think you're a really good example of that. I think your core initial driver was want to lose weight, want to be fitter, the wedding's coming, and that was like the main thing. As you said, underneath that, there were other areas that you recognised that you weren't showing up as your best, and they were important, but it wasn't, I guess, the core thing. And so it was like, well, if I fix that, that's it. And to some extent, that's true. But actually, if you look a bit more fundamentally and sort of address things more holistically and systemically, it does just then have that positive knock-on effect everywhere else. And it wasn't that was your driver, but once you get a bit of that and you get it, oh yeah, of course this is going to be part of the things. That's a good thing, right? And so that's important. On the flip, I have some guys who come and they go, I just need to sort my head out. It's all mindset based because they're quite, cerebral. Body doesn't mean anything, and they might be overweight. It's like, yeah, but if we get you fitter, feeling better physically and whatever else, guaranteed that's gonna help. So it's not either or. For me, it's both, right? And you put it all together, and then as a byproduct or as emergent property, you start to feel, look, and operate better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I remember on the WhatsApp chat and stuff that we had, right? Like you had a couple of guys there when I was there that were like on that kind of mental, side of things. They wanted to, they were trying to work out like, hey, how do I deal with stress and how do I, and like I say, all of those things are connected, right? And again, that's like something that you start to you learn through the course of the program is, these things are connected. And if I do this and, I eat better and I stop drinking alcohol all the time and I do this, right? Like actually, I do feel less stressed.
Yeah.
You know, I feel more capable of stuff and, like it is all connected. So, that was a good learning process to go through over the course of the program, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of joining the dots. I think that speaks to being, I guess, just a bit more conscious and aware about you and your part in things, right? And recognizing that we do X, Y, and Z, well, then that's fine, but that will have an outcome, both positive or negative, depending on what it is. And once you start to join the dots on that a bit, it becomes a bit more empowering because it's like, I mean, the really obvious one is, right, oh, I'm just knackered every morning. Okay, well, why are you knackered? Oh, well, when I'm stressed, I come home and I have like half a bottle of wine. Okay, do you reckon if we didn't do that, you might feel a bit fresher in the morning? And I'm not saying just you, Lee, I mean, for anyone. And so when someone does that, oh, I feel a bit better. Yeah, there we go. Now, if you want to do that, I'm not here to judge you to say you can't, but I think it's being able to sort of recognize that things are correlated. And for some reason, when we're in it, we don't draw those correlations. And so being able to see that and go, well, if I do this, this, and this, or don't do this and this will have an impact elsewhere. And once you start to see that and feel that for yourself, and you go, well, no, I felt then, and I feel differently now because I've done something different to change it. You're, oh, okay. But then you've sort of split tested it for yourself so you can see that, right? And I think that ultimately that just means you're more empowered so you can make those decisions for yourself when you're out in the wild, not in a coaching process.
Yeah. I mean, we did a bit of that. I remember we actually spent some time looking at like, what happens in the evening and the routine and, we both get home late from work and, then you got dinner and stuff and you got, and it's like, actually that's making it hard to get up super early in the morning because so like we did some stuff where we restructured like what that evening looked like and off the back of it we sort of restructured like how our week worked and things like that, right? And it was all like actually these are all quite positive changes, and
that's it, and that's what speaks to that. Well, we're too busy, we haven't got time to exercise. Okay, potentially that's true. I'm just using exercise as an example. Well, our evenings are too manic because we get home late and we're trying to exercise in the evening, but if we exercise in the evening, it gets really late, we can't eat. Well, okay, well, could you try it in the morning? Yeah, but I'm knackered in the morning. We're knackered in the morning because you get to bed late. So do you reckon we could bring the bedtime back? Okay, well, why is the bedtime late? Well, because I'm working a bit late and I'm doing this. Well, do you reckon you can maybe manage your work boundaries so you stop that? And so, it's a bit like there's a hole in your bucket, but you start to pull that, like you said, and then you go, well, oh, it is possible. I might need to jiggle around what I'm doing, but if we look and change some of these bits, then you can operate in a different way. And it's not that there's a right or a wrong per se, but it's about being able to look at it objectively and go, well, there's a thing I want to achieve. It's not working. Well, don't just stop. You wouldn't do that in business. Let your team go, oh, yeah, we want to do that. It's like, oh, yeah, well, I can't do it. Why? I don't know, but I just went, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. You go, no, hold up a second. Like, well, why is that? And what's happening? What was that conversation there? You'd unpick it, right? I think when it comes to ourselves, we just don't do that. We're like, oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I can't. Oh, I'm lazy. Really? There's a lot of guys I with. Someone who's got to where you got to your career and strike me as someone who's lazy. So why would you be behaving lazily? And we look at their evening. Well, I'm staying up late. I'm drinking. I'm on my phone. I'm oh, well, maybe we can address some of that, and you might get up. And it sort of sounds obvious when we talk about it, but I think the royal you, when you're in some of those patterns of behaviour, you don't always see that you're doing them. And so what obviously a coaching process can do is help shine a light on that. But then once you do that, you can change it. And that's what I believe leads to that consistency, long-term change. We haven't just brute forced you doing something over the top. We've looked at the reason why it isn't happening and addressed that, so then it can happen consistently, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you obviously work with lots of guys like sit in a similar position to me, so you sort of get to see like what some of those common things are that like are the causes and stuff like that, right? Which was good because you probably knew what some of my problems were before I even opened my mouth and told you, right?
Yeah.
That helps, and it's easy in the program, right? Like I you're you're quite brutally honest with stuff about like that whole relationship between, well, if you do this, you drink that bottle of wine, you are going to struggle to get, like, you're pretty kind of direct with all that sort of stuff, which was, again, it's quite nice, right? Because it's just you call it out and you can then deal with it, and there's no judgment with it either, because it's like, look, if you want to do that, you can do that, but then this is the consequence of it, right? And so kind of, if that's what you choose to do, deal with it, right? And like, it's your own kind of
You're
like,
making your own bed. Well, that's it. And it's not. I don't want to say it as like a reverse psychology. It's like, it's not a genuine. It's like so. Like, if you want to do that, okay. And if that's something that's important to you, we can build things around it. Recognize it's going to have an impact, but don't be surprised when you wake up. Oh, it's not fair. Well, why? You chose to do that, and so and that's the thing. So it's not me like being mean to someone. It's just being honest. And so but then you're the grown up, so you can make that decision, right? But sometimes you'll want to make that decision. Probably not every day, but like, well, actually, it's a fun night out. So I'm going to get a bit stuck in, and I will feel a bit rougher tomorrow. That's okay. So but I think often where we can end up before we get a bit more conscious and aware and put these good habits in place is you just do these things on repeat and don't quite see the impact that they're having, and you just assume that's the norm. Then when you get someone to take a step back and get a different perspective, you go, well, that doesn't have to be. And so that can have an impact, but it doesn't have to be all the time, right?
yeah, exactly. Which, especially like, working in London and stuff like that, like it's easy to get, you sort of fall into that pattern, right? It's easy to go out for after work drinks. It's easy to, you know, go and grab some food on the way home and stuff like that, right? And like, you don't see it on that day-to-day basis necessarily, but then like when you look big picture and actually like tracking all of that stuff and like actually spending some time looking at that, and like, then you start to go, oh my God, actually, like, I'm sure most people in your thing probably don't think they drink a lot, as an example, right? And when you actually like spend some time and like, oh, Jesus Christ, it's more than I thought it was going to be, right? And you know, same thing with eating pizza or
Or
whatever the
phone or whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah, exactly, right,
So it's like I don't have enough much time. Okay, we all are really busy. What's your screen time?
yeah,
5 hours. All right, do you reckon you get that to 3? You're like, there you go. You just gained 2 hours from somewhere, So things like that. But again, we're often blind to what we do, right? And if you can shine a light on it, help someone see it without judgment, well, then we can correct it. And
yeah.
that's the magic.
Well, I felt like super productive, right? Like compared to before, like, like you see some folks, they're up at 5 a.m. and hitting the gym, and then they're working, and then they're, like, Jesus Christ, like, how do these people do it? Like, well, actually, I learned how they do
You
it,
really, yeah, exactly.
you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a chat with a gent today actually, and he's decided he's going to sign up to the program, and he was talking about like he saw some guy who was a client, and the gent I'm talking about works in investment banking, and he'd seen a client who just made a lot of money. And he was like, he just had his shit together. He looked sharp. He was well, and he looked disciplined. And he was like, that I want a bit of that. And I was like, to what we just said there, you look at his day and his week and his evening, it won't be a shit show. And I'm not saying he's amazing because he's made money. Park that part. I mean, someone that looks switched on is on it. His life won't be a constant string of firefighting. It'll be pretty regimented. There'll be stuff in their place. He'll be taking care of himself. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be predicated on having bits and bobs together. And that's what you're saying there. It's like, you look at those people, it's a mystery. It's like, they haven't just got this untapped resource of ultimate willpower and discipline, because that's finite and it'd be too hard. They've just got good systems in place that allow them to do these things, right? And I think that's the core thing. It's none of it's impossible. There's something I heard the other day. It's like the art of the possible. It's like, it is possible. You might have to rejig and rethink how you're doing things, and there's always an element of compromise in the lives that we live, especially at the age we're at with the age of our children and the amount of business and stuff. Like, it's never going to be the exact thing, but there's always a middle ground where you can find the sweet spot, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to cannibalise any more of your time. Really appreciate you coming on and talking. I know I got a lot of this chat, and anyone listening, I'm sure, will as well. Before we jump off, any parting thoughts or comments?
No, I mean, just I'm just super grateful for everything really over the last little while. Like everything that I wanted to do when I kicked the program off, like I feel like, you know, we achieved that, and then, you know, a lot more as well. Um, like there's been a couple of things. There's been like a couple of things in my life that have had you know, a pretty big, profound impact on me. Right, one was years ago. An old boss of mine sent me to a Tony Robbins
Nice.
thing in the States, right? And it's similar to that, right? He was talking about like how you break habits and stuff, right? And like I left that thinking, you know, actually anything is possible, right? Like there was that, and there was this, you know, this like showed me that, you know, that you can do all of this stuff. And that was the one bit Tony sort of taught me, like work wise, anything's possible. You can go after what you want and you can be successful and da, 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 da. And then this has taught me that actually from like a kind of personal fitness perspective, you know, the same thing's also true there as well. So yeah, I'm just deeply grateful for all of it. And, you know, it's been great. I love doing the program. And like, as you know, I'm taking a little hiatus now while I go off and do some stuff, but I'm going to be coming back in a few months. So
Awesome. Well, look, mate. Like I said, it was an absolute pleasure. I love working with you. You deserve all the success you've got, and it's amazing to see you and your journey. And as and when we pick things up, I'm excited to do that as well. And like we discussed, it won't be like, Luke, it's all gone wrong. It's like, I'm feeling great. What about version 3, 4, and 5? And we build from there. So that's really exciting, and I'm excited for that day. On that note, Lee, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. If anyone is watching, they're interested in having a chat with me about what I can do, how I can help, like we've discussed with Lee, drop me a note in the comments or the DMs. Otherwise, I'll see you all next week. Cheers.